So, part 4 of our video series, howdy, Redesert Boy here. We're going to talk about my most often EDCs. Now remember, these are just my thoughts and opinions. I'm sharing with you a little bit about how I worked through getting to where I went from a person that lived in a state where their carry was really very difficult and most people just didn't do it, very strict gun laws, to a state that had ones that allow you to carry but with a permit, to one that's much more allows you under whatever the constitutional carry, as they call it, provided you meet the requirements for somebody that's not prohibited from carrying or having a permit and things. Those are all important things. So we want to be compliant with all our local, state, and federal firearms rules, regulations, CCW, concealed carry permitting, hunting, all that stuff. So with that out of the way, what do I most often carry nowadays? Well, nowadays, I do carry, I carry very often, and we'll check these unloaded again. This is a 351 PD Smith & Wesson 7-round 22 Magnum that I pocket carry because I spend a lot of my time just going from my house down to the hardware store, maybe to the grocery store or something. And generally, it's during the day. There's the other things you got to think about. Is it during the day? Is it at night? Am I going to a venue where I can't have my firearms? You have to think about all that. Are you willing to leave it in the car? Like when I was living in Nevada, I would go somewhere and I said, oh, heck, I got a doctor's appointment, but I kind of hate to drive around this city of 2 million people unarmed. And I had a permit. I had a concealed carry permit. So I would take my Bond Arms Derringer. It was only 2 shots, but it was a 45. But I kind of hated to leave it secured because, and that's another thing we'll talk about here in a minute. Leaving it secured in my car the best I could, locked up in some way, while I went in there, right? Because if it got taken, I didn't want to be out one of my weapons, right? So that was something I did. So that's the other thing. You want to make sure any firearms that you have, that you have a way to secure them, right? If you need to use trigger locks, if you need to use a little lock box, if you need to lock them in their case, but most especially at home, you want to try to have lockable. Some places require it by law, that it be locked up, but some of them require that you have specific gun safes, like I think California does. They got very specific rules about that. So you want to make sure there's a secure environment where you can put your weapons when they're not in use or under your observation. Because, you're at the range, you maybe don't have them on you, but they're under your observation. You're responsible for them. You especially if you are around, there's people think about, they want to make sure it's secure from children and stuff. There might be people that, maybe they're not very good about not drinking a lot or something. You want to make sure all that stuff is secured far away from them, right? And sometimes as people age, they have other issues. I've been through that, and that's something, when you're dealing with people that, they're not as cognizant as what's going on. You cannot allow those kind of things to be available to them. So just things to think about when you're thinking about doing your EDC. You want to make sure you have a way to secure your weapons, even especially like when you're traveling and things, how do you want to have them? So anyway, there's different ways to carry. These guns I carry quite often. And I haven't checked this one empty. Let's make sure I do that. Make sure I check this one empty again. I don't know if I had done that again. Right. This one here, I used to carry more often. I still carry it a fair amount. I have one with a hammer on it. It's a 9mm that I'm starting to carry more because the 9mm round has certain advantages. It's easier to eject with its moon clips, but on the other hand, you have to be careful the moon clips don't get bent and things. But this one here, I carry a fair amount of time because it's got a nice long handle. It's lighter weight. It's 38 plus P, you know. The P380 back in one of my, the P365 380 that I had in one of my other videos with the optic on it. I carry that quite a bit because remember, I'm in a, generally when you're in more residential, going to your local neighborhood and your stores, depending on your environment, it's probably a lower risk one than you go down to the downtown or the industrial area where you might feel you need more protection. As I mentioned just a minute ago, right? I carry this guy quite a bit because I carry it in a pocket holster. These other ones I carry in outside the waist holster generally. On occasion, I will carry something like this 686 Plus or my Ruger Security 6. Now, I maybe don't carry them in an outside the waistband holster. I carry them in a shoulder holster because in a shoulder holster, first of all, it's not hanging off your hip. You don't have to worry about it getting in the way of getting in and out of the vehicle as much. It's a little less apparent that you have it. But, you know, this is the winter time a lot more up here than it was, say, in Nevada. And when people might notice something like that, and especially if you're walking around, you know, and you got a t-shirt and a light vest on or just a cover garment, you know, a Hawaiian shirt or something, you might be able to carry it the shoulder holster, but it'd be something like the Walther PPK 380 I was mentioning. It had a shoulder holster. It's part of the reason why I got it was so I could, you know, in a, shall I say, a more summertime condition or somewhere where I need something that's smaller, less observable, less obvious that I have it, you know, something like that. That's where these pocket carries come in handy for a lot of people in the summertime. So, you know, those are the things that I carry. So I stick to snub-nose revolvers. I do have a 6-round Colt Detective Special that I carry sometimes that it gives me one more round. But, and I also have 32 caliber Smith & Wesson long, which are 6-rounders. One's an H&R 733, and one is a hand ejector. They're both older. One's from the 90s or 80s, and the other one is from 1940 or so. So you have to feel comfortable with that if you want to carry something like that. But they have some new J-frames, much like this one, that now shoot 32s, including that round, and a round called the H&R Magnum. And some people are picking that because they get 6 rounds and they also get lower recoil than they do with a 38 Special. So when I carry this guy around, you know, most of us have speed loaders. You've seen those like I was showing you before, like that. Sometimes you use speed strips. These are ones for the 22 Magnum. So a lot of things to think about. There are other ways to carry. Some people have ankle holsters. I've never tried those. I have issues sometimes with my legs, so I don't figure that's best for me. But that's what I kind of do nowadays. I'm kind of down to where I want something lightweight and comfortable because my environment dictates I can probably do that. If I decide to travel, you know, 100 miles to another town and I'm going to go through places that are more rural where there could be you know, some places where there's nothing out there or where I'm going through areas where there could be dangerous game. I mean, they don't usually hang around the freeway, but, you know, I like to be prepared. So, once again, you know, I'd probably default more to something like this or my Ruger Security 6. So, if you're going hunting, yeah, then I would use, I have a, you know, 45 Colt Blackhawk that's plus P. That's my hunting pistol. That's, you know, but hopefully if I'm hunting, I also have a long gun. So just things to think about. So in our next one, we'll talk about some adjustments and things that you might make as time goes on. Once again, safety's number one. Always want to think about your purpose of use. You know, what calibers do you need? You know, what are you doing it for? Target, practice, you know, target, you know, home, everyday carry. You know, what's your environment? What's the kind of concealment things? Travel reciprocity. We'll talk about that in the next one a little more. So as Reed Desert Boy always says, be safe out there, whatever you're doing. And we'll see you in part 5, which is adjustments.